There's a certain kind of silence that only comes in the early morning, the kind that wraps around your bones and makes you listen more closely than you have in years. That was the silence Harold stood in, just beyond the faded lace curtains of his kitchen window. The garden outside hadn't changed much over the decades. The same ivy curled along the fence. The same cracked stones formed a path he'd once walked every day. But something had changed. It wasn't the garden that grew more distant. It was his legs. Where once he could stride across the yard with a mug of coffee in one hand and his thoughts in the other, now even the idea of taking that first step seemed heavier than it used to. Not painful exactly, just slower, more uncertain. And yet, in that quiet moment, with the sun filtering through the trees like it always had, Harold felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity. What if this wasn't just age catching up to him? What if the weariness in his legs, the tremble he noticed when he stood too fast, wasn't some irreversible sentence, but instead a signal, a whisper from the body asking not for surrender, but for attention? He had always believed strength faded with the years, that one day without fanfare, your body simply gave in. But that morning, something resisted that belief. A question took root. What if I've been feeding everything except the very things that carry me? And that was the moment his story began to change. The question lingered with Harold for days. It nestled quietly in his mind, weaving itself into every step he took, every pause at the staircase, every slow rising from his favorite armchair. And then, almost as if summoned by that very question, he found himself thinking of Linda. Linda, the woman from his book club, who always wore bright scarves and had a laugh that didn't match her thin frame. She had once told the group that walking used to be her meditation. 2 miles each morning, no excuses. But something changed after she turned 70. It started small, just a stiffness in her knees, a longer recovery time after her usual walk. Then came the soreness, the heavy drag in her thighs that no stretching could soothe. She thought, like so many do, well, I've had a good run. This must be what slowing down looks like. But Linda wasn't the type to surrender. She was the type to investigate, so she asked questions. And what she found changed everything. Her doctor, an aging specialist from Boston who had studied muscular degeneration for decades, told her something Harold had never heard before. The enemy isn't always age. It's inflammation. Quiet, chronic, invisible, until one day your muscles stop responding the way they used to. And then, with almost poetic certainty, the doctor added, if muscles are the engines of your body, then omega-3s are the oil that keeps them from seizing. That's when salmon entered the story, not as dinner, but as medicine. 3 times a week, Linda added wild-caught salmon to her meals. Not some fancy dish, just grilled, simple, intentional. Within weeks, the change was undeniable. The soreness faded. Her legs no longer screamed after a walk. They whispered thanks. Her balance returned. And most incredibly, so did her confidence. Science had already backed this up long before Linda ever tried it. In a groundbreaking study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, older adults who regularly consumed omega-3 rich fish showed significant improvement in muscle mass and function without increasing exercise. The omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, not only reduced systemic inflammation, but actually enhanced muscle protein synthesis, the body's way of rebuilding strength. But it wasn't just the omega-3s. Salmon is also one of the rare natural sources of vitamin D, a nutrient essential for proper muscle contraction and balance. A deficiency, shockingly common in older adults, often goes unnoticed until the falls begin, the stumbles, the silent instability. For Linda, salmon became her quiet revolution, and for Harold, her story lit something inside him. It wasn't just about legs anymore. It was about dignity, about holding on to the freedom to move, not with speed, but with strength. He stared at the old salmon recipe tucked in his cupboard, and for the first time in a long time, he felt not old, but ready. It had been 3 weeks since Harold dusted off the old skillet and gave salmon a proper home on his dinner plate, and something, though subtle, had shifted. His legs didn't groan as much when he stood. There was a new firmness in his steps, like his body had been waiting for permission to fight back. But as he grew more attuned to his body, he began to notice something else. His legs, though steadier, often felt cold. Not just from the autumn breeze seeping under the door, but from within, like warmth itself was struggling to reach them. Occasionally, when he'd lie in bed at night, a strange cramp would curl around his calf, sharp and sudden, like a warning whispered too late. It reminded him of Robert. Robert had always been the strong one in the neighborhood, the kind of man who carried groceries for widows and chopped firewood just to stay warm. But time had a cruel way of changing the narrative. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Robert had begun to lose his rhythm. He'd pause halfway through the grocery aisle, pretending to check his list when really he just needed to catch his breath. His legs felt heavy, not from weight, but from something deeper, like life itself was slowing down in his veins. At first he shrugged it off. "Just age," he said. "Nothing I haven't earned." But the day he stumbled stepping off the curb, with no one around to help him up, Robert realized this wasn't just aging, it was a quiet emergency. When he finally spoke with his doctor, he learned something most people never hear in time. Your blood is your river of life. If it slows down, everything downstream suffers, especially your legs. Poor circulation, they told him, was stealing the vitality from his limbs, drop by drop. The cause wasn't a disease, but a deficiency. His blood vessels, once elastic and generous, had begun to stiffen, narrowing the path between his heart and his feet. The prescription? Not a pill, not a surgery, just spinach. That unassuming leaf, so often pushed aside on dinner plates, held within it a miracle. Not in the form of hype, but in nitrates, natural compounds that convert into nitric oxide, a molecule that opens up blood vessels like a key unlocking a door. With each widened vessel, more oxygen flowed, more nutrients arrived. Muscles that had been gasping for life finally breathed again. And spinach didn't come alone. It brought with it magnesium, a mineral as quiet as it is powerful, essential for muscle relaxation and contraction. Without enough of it, spasms arise, stiffness takes root, and your legs, once strong and responsive, begin to feel like strangers you no longer trust. Robert made a vow. Every morning, a handful of spinach in his eggs. Every evening, a salad rich with green. Not as an obligation, but as a rescue mission, for his legs and for the life they still had left to carry. And sure enough, the change came. His grocery trips stretched longer, not because he was slower, but because he didn't need to stop. His legs felt lighter, warmer. The cramps disappeared. It wasn't youth he'd regained. It was flow. Back in his own kitchen, Harold stood quietly, holding a single leaf of spinach between his fingers. It was soft, almost fragile, and yet within it was something ancient. Something powerful enough to stir the rivers inside him back to life. He didn't say anything. He just placed it gently on the cutting board and kept going.
Lord, I did not come here to impress you with words. I did not come because I have all the right things to say. I came because I cannot carry this ache alone. You see what no one else sees. The quiet exhaustion behind the smile. The questions I'm too afraid to ask aloud. The places in me that feel both holy and hollow. But you, God, you do not flinch at my weakness. You do not recoil from the ruin. You step closer. You kneel low. You call my name as if it were the most beautiful sound you've ever known. And maybe it is, because you were there when it was first spoken, before the noise, before the trauma, before the forgetting. You remember who I am even when I don't. So I come, not to perform, but to be found, not to prove, but to rest, not to climb toward you, but to fall into the arms that have never stopped reaching for me. Lord Jesus, if all I can offer today is silence, then let my silence be sacred. If all I can bring is my weariness, then receive it like incense rising from a broken altar. I don't ask for a miracle today. I ask for awareness. Awareness that you are here, that you are near, that you are enough. Because the miracle, I'm beginning to realize, is you. You are the peace I've been chasing. You are the answer I've been rehearsing questions for. You are the quiet center in the middle of this spinning world. So I surrender, not out of duty, but desire. Not out of fear, but faith. Not because I've figured everything out, but because I believe you already have. You are the shepherd when I am lost. You are the light when I am buried in shadow. You are the rock beneath my trembling feet. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalm 23:4. You are with me. You have always been with me. And so I pray, not with perfect words, but with an honest heart. Hold me, heal me, remind me, renew me. And let this prayer be more than sound. Let it be surrender. Let it be encounter. Let it be the beginning of a love I can no longer live without. In your holy, beautiful, ever-present name, amen.
By the end of that month, Harold's kitchen looked different. Not in appearance, but in intention. The salmon wasn't just fish anymore. It was strength. The spinach wasn't a garnish. It was circulation. The yogurt, resting quietly on the shelf, had become trust. And yet, something still felt unfinished. His legs, though steadier, still lacked something. Not quite power, but endurance. That quiet fuel that used to carry him through an entire day without pause. That once let him lose track of time pruning the garden or strolling down memory-filled roads. Now, even after progress, he'd feel the fatigue settle in by noon, as though his body ran out of breath before his heart did. That final piece of the puzzle came unexpectedly through a phone call. It was Susan, his sister-in-law, once known for her boundless energy and the way she could turn a wild, tangled yard into a blooming paradise with nothing but a trowel in her hands. But in recent years, she had slowed, visibly. She told Harold that gardening had become more resting than planting. She'd sit in her chair, watching the weeds grow faster than her hands could keep up. She missed the dirt, the sun on her neck, the satisfying ache after a long day tending to life. I thought it was just me, she whispered, like I was quietly fading into the soil. But her granddaughter, a young, bright-eyed dietitian, had another idea. She had looked at Susan's plate and said, without judgment but with conviction, "You're not feeding your fire, Grandma. You're snacking on sparks, but what your body needs is embers." And so, she gave her a root. Not a rare supplement, not a powder promise, just sweet potatoes. Software, earthy, ancient, but behind their humble skin, sweet potatoes hold the one thing older muscles crave but rarely receive: steady energy. Unlike sugar-laced snacks or refined carbs that flood the bloodstream with a rush, then leave you empty, Sweet potatoes release energy slowly, sustaining every movement, every breath, every step with quiet resilience. They are rich in complex carbohydrates, the kind that feed muscles instead of spiking blood sugar, and within them lies a powerful friend, potassium, a mineral essential for preventing cramps, aiding contraction, and restoring what exertion quietly depletes. Susan began roasting them twice a week. Olive oil, a dash of cinnamon, no fanfare, and slowly the shift returned. Her hands dug back into the earth. Her pauses between planting grew shorter. She began finishing tasks again, not just physically, but with joy. And most of all, she smiled while standing. That was what Harold remembered most. The thought of Susan, laughing in her garden boots, mud on her knees, sweat on her brow, and life blooming not just from the soil, but from inside her. He looked at the sweet potatoes on his counter, their rough skins hiding the warmth within. He peeled them slowly, reverently, as though uncovering a secret passed down from root to soul. Because now he knew, strength isn't just what lifts you. Endurance isn't just what carries you. Together, they're what lets you live fully, even when the world thinks you're supposed to slow down. Harold's plate that evening wasn't fancy, just roasted sweet potatoes, spinach sautéed with garlic, a slice of grilled salmon, and a side of Greek yogurt with honey and walnuts. But to him, it was more than dinner. It was a declaration, a promise to his legs, to his life, that he wasn't done walking, not yet.